Hello, welcome to Museum Moment. Thanks for bearing with me as we're a little late today. I had a tour group and I wanted to do this one live because there's something about being in the presence of the Torah that felt like talking about a Torah needed to be a live program. So today on this Museum Moment, we are talking about how Torah is made. And this actually came to us from one of our interns who, thought about how we talk about all of these ideas around Jewish life and culture, and maybe the making of a Torah could be an interesting point within that life and culture. So as part of this, in terms of thinking about the timing, this seemed like the perfect week because we are a week before Shavuot. Shavuot starts on Sunday night and goes Monday, Tuesday next week. So we will not have a museum moment next week. And in thinking about Shavuot is the holiday that commemorates the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. It's a holiday that is incredibly joyous. It's a holiday that really gets that you're supposed to study the Torah for hours and hours and hours. And in thinking about this, so many of us know the Torah, we know what's in the Torah, but thinking about how a Torah is made gives us another way of kind of getting to those stories. And it's incredibly specific. And what I'm going to talk about here today is only scratching the surface. You can get into a whole set of laws around any single piece that I'm going to talk about today, and it probably could be its own museum moment. So as we're jumping in, recognize that this is an ancient art form that we're discussing today. And this is the Torah that you see as you come into Jewish Museum Milwaukee. And generally when I have groups of visitors within, and especially student groups, we talk about this process of how it's made and how if you compare Torahs between multiple time periods, hundreds of years ago, last week, they're the same. And it's because the work of quality control is such that the writing itself needs to be the same. So what you're looking at here is the 5 books of Moses. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And each one of those is written in a scroll, and the specifics of how they are written is so specific. They're written by a sofer, a scribe, and much of the tradition is passed down through generations. You have to be apprenticed to someone, and there are all sorts of challenges in writing a Torah, and even the process of making it, the equipment, everything needs to be, it's not like you're going to a Torah factory to find these things, that each one of these pieces has to be created specifically to make a Torah. It's so labor intensive that just thinking about it, is an undertaking. We show this in our museum, the center of our exhibit on Jewish belief and community, because this really is the center of Jewish life and learning. And one of the things that I always like to comment on with the Torah is that what is being read in any community all around the world is basically we're in the same space. There's some variations. There's some communities that do the triennial portion. For the majority of communities, and even within that triennial, that we're in the same parshiot. So this week, all over the world, we will be reading from Bamidbar, the beginning of the book of Bamidbar, and this gives a real way of understanding Jewish connections and practice. Here are 2 Torahs as they are open from 2 different congregations in Milwaukee. I believe one is CBINT and the other is Temple Menorah. That's Rabbi Gila Ezra. And you see that this is that sense of continuity and reading that happens each week. In fact, 3 times a week. But the Torah itself, despite some differences between, say, the Eitz and the rollers, or the fact what it's open to, that the Torah itself from the inside would be the same in either of these pictures in either of these time periods. So this is always that moment. Come on, presentation. You want to show what's what. Here, we'll go right here. The Torah by the numbers. It has to be written on parchment. It has to have a very specific number of letters, 304,805 letters. There are 245 columns and there are 42 lines per column. All of this is specific and similar and the same. And if there is a letter missing, if there is a word missing, this Torah is not kosher. And in fact, after a Torah is finished, after the Torah is finished, they have to keep they have to go back through it and check it, and they go back through 3 different times to make sure there's certain things that can be corrected. And this is one of those things where people are like, well, if there's one mistake, then the whole thing is out. No, because it is made in panels that you can take out a panel, you can replace. But if there are multiple errors, then they will say it's not appropriate. And when you're writing a Torah, you have to write with another Torah open in front of you. And you have to have the text open, even if this is your 15th Torah that you've written. So I think now there's actually some computer programming that can go through and check and make sure that everything's correct. But I still think one of the things that you do is hands-on watching, reading through every single word. And there's so many nuances to how it's written. It's not just about the fact that the words have to be there, but they have to be written in specific ways. So some of these legislations are that it's got to be written on the skin of a clean animal, meaning a kosher animal. It must be prepared for synagogue use by Jews only. So that's, and to get even to the skin part of this, you're taking a kosher animal like a deer, a sheep, a cow, and you're using, it has to be prepared in a specific way. When you're writing on it, you're writing on the flesh side only, not the hair side. The hair has to be removed. They're stretched over time. It can take 60 or so animal skins in order to create a Torah. So it's an extensive project to engage. Each skin must contain an exact number of columns, which must be equal throughout the entire manuscript. The breadth of each column consists of 30 letters. The whole copy must be first line, so you're going to take it and score it, and then you're going to write on top. You actually write with the letters at the top of your score lines. The ink must be black, and the ink itself, the preparation of ink is such an intensive process where you're using these things called gallnuts. You're mixing them with a tannic acid and another thing, and then you're letting that mixture sit for 6 months so it becomes this true black color. And everything, again, has to be prepared by the people who are writing the Torahs. The original used to make the copy must be authentic. It must not be deviated. No word or letter can be written from memory. So even if you're writing the Shema, you still have to write it by making sure that you're looking at the copy and then writing it over. The space between each of the letters is the space of a hair or a thread must intervene between each consonant, and the space of 9 consonants must become between each section. No word can touch another. A space of 3 lines must come between every book. That we'll see at the beginning of our reading this week. And all of this is incredible. If any of these things aren't reached, then that's the challenge. Then this would not be considered a kosher Torah. So the Torah themselves, I talked about all of these other implements. There are a couple of ways in which people write Torahs. One, and the older version was with a reed implement, like you see on the left there. The Sephardi tradition is still to use reeds. In the Ashkenazi tradition now they use quills. And to cut the quill is a process that takes 7 or so steps. And then when you're writing the Torah using the quill, and actually I showed you the difference because the reed pen doesn't have you can't get as thin of a letter. The Sephardi Torahs that were written in the Sephardi tradition have a little bit of a thicker font, whereas those that are written in the Ashkenazi tradition have a little bit of a thinner font and the ability to have things that kind of turn more quickly. So that's what you see here. There's certain words, when you're writing the name of God, you have to have a completely new, You have to dip your pen in your quill or your reed pen in the ink right before you write that. There are all sorts of rules on, if you're the scribe, you have to go to the ritual bath before you start this process, the mikveh. Sometime we'll do a session on mikveh. And each part of this process is just an incredible, kind of rumination. And if you think about that, thousands of years ago, this was, adorning a work that would have been sacred, that would have been singular, most people couldn't read. And now you still have this sense of getting back to this historic tradition, as you're writing a Torah, and this is the way Torahs are produced, that it's not something that can be manufactured or mass produced, because the whole intent here is to have something that is sacred, and the connection between the scribe and the writing of the Torah is very much connected to the sense of the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. This is part of that ancient tradition. There are places in the Torah where the columns are beautifully are arranged very differently. So I have a couple of examples here. One is on the left, that's the Song of the Sea, which is as the Israelites are arriving at the Sea of Reeds. This is what the song looks like as they're singing afterwards. And it looks a little bit like the sea itself. There's this parting. It's a wider column. And this is, all Torahs have this beautiful interlude in the middle of it. The other thing is I have the Shema here. And here there are several places, I think it's about 15 or 16 places, where you have bigger letters that are written by the scribe on purpose for different sorts of reasons. One is the Gimel in the middle of the very middle letter of the entire book in Leviticus is a bigger G, just to know you're at that halfway point. Here is the Shema, the central prayer of the Jewish people. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And Echad and Shema both have larger letters in there, the Ayin and the Daled. And one thinking there is that this is a way of making sure that you have that central prayer, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, that you don't have any confusion to say maybe, because Shema with an Aleph instead of that Ayin could be maybe, God is one, or if you had that as a resh at the end instead of a Daled at the end of where it says Ahad, that it would be a hair, God is other. So this is a way of making sure that that statement, that aphorism of Jewish people is clear. This is 3 samples of Torah calligraphy. And you can see that the Bet and the Gimel there have little crowns on top of them. And these crowns are called tagin, and they're specific letters that are crowned and others that are not. You can see the Aleph does not have this crown. And there's certain letters that get 1 crown and others that get 3. And each one of these becomes its own set of midrashes and stories that can be put forth about why these things have crowns and not. But it makes the Torah itself incredibly beautiful. And there's a little bit of variation between how people do these tagin. Sometimes they look like little zayins. So zayin itself the letter itself has 3 tagins. As Torahs are completed and a congregation is commissioned to Torah, they generally do a dedication. And this is a dedication ceremony from Shir Hadash in Milwaukee. And actually, former JMM board member Jason Steigman is pictured in this picture. But it's a time of celebration. It's a time to say, this is what we've accomplished as a congregation. This is how we've come together. And we now have a new example of the word of Torah to be part of our congregational life and to help sustain us. And it really is central, so central to Jewish life. And there's so many ways of examining it. And clearly, I'm only scratching the surface here of how Torahs are created, but I think it gives you a little bit of a sense of that process. I want to thank our supporter, Robin Cohen, as always, for making these museum moments possible. And I also want to go ahead and tell you can learn more about Jewish Museum Milwaukee at our website, jewishmuseummilwaukee.org. We hope that you'll come visit soon. I look forward to seeing you. Thanks so much and have a great day.